Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. This is another highly requested episode on guns. People wanted, specifically they wanted realistic guns, so got a couple of those in here as well as just a couple other things. This one doesn't just have 3 mocks, it actually has a few more, but I feel like I'm going to cover some a little bit more quickly, so let's see how we go. But hey, welcome to the Bionicle Inspiration Series. This is a series where we cover the mocks of the community to help you get inspired to build something cool of your own. So let's begin, shall we? The first mock that we have is by Oblivious and is called SaiLeTesla gun. This mock on its own, without the gun, looks fantastic. There's some brilliant stuff going on, and I'll come back to that a little later. But for now, let's talk about the gun, as that is what this episode is about. So this one is a little less realistic. It's a little more sci-fi awesome. I think what really works with this is it uses those spear parts, and even the trans piece there in the middle there, the trans yellow greenish part there. Very, very cool, because, you know, sci-fi guns obviously have the general shape of a gun, but they often have this sort of, translucent weird thing going on, and, you know, it's got spikes and pointy bits and all sorts of craziness on it. You know, look at any gun that you would see in the game Borderlands, and you'll know exactly what I mean. And so I think just that simple addition of, because otherwise the design is very monochromatic, just using kind of different shades of grey, but adding in that splash of a translucent color like that really helps it pop and gives it a really nice sci-fi feel. And then adding the addition of that sort of 3-prong kind of thing around it makes it look like it shoots lasers and awesome stuff like that. So yeah, getting out some system parts like that, or even some weapon parts and things like that, would be perfect to kind of add a little bit of flair to a gun that you may not otherwise see. Another really cool thing, I actually had someone ask this ages ago, and I was like, I'll see what I can do, and it looks like I finally did it. He actually uses a friction joint on the back of the gun. Somebody was like, how do I use these friction joint parts? Apparently on the back of a gun. Looks quite nice for the little tip there at the end. I think that's awesome. Looks fantastic. One thing I really like about this is, sort of in the middle there, we've got these gear parts. And it almost kind of looks like it's a way to kind of cock the gun in some fashion. And I think that's really cool. You know, it kind of implies a level of functionality and kind of implies a certain amount of story behind the gun in a way, because your mind kind of conjures up what exactly that would do, what sort of function it would have. I think little bits like that, specifically with sort of sci-fi guns, are really, really clever. You know, a lot of things are improved when it looks like it tells a story. And so I think that's a fantastic addition. Now, let's quickly talk about the mock that holds this gun, which is a phenomenal, amazing mock. Oblivious has done a great job. Really awesome custom head design there, using a lot of different system parts, but even cooler to see some of those wing pieces on there. Really adds a sort of angelic guardian-like vibe, and looks fantastic. And it's funny, I don't really see those wing pieces used very often on mocks, so it's really, really awesome to see that. Also really like some of the torso shaping. They're using some of those little skull spider head mask thingamajigs to create a really cool sort of oval shaped thing around the center of the chest there. It looks fantastic and it's just brilliant. There's a lot to love about this mock. We spoke a little bit on this mock about sort of implying functionality, which is really cool. So we're going to move on to the next mock, which is by the average Man Triton. And I'm not actually sure what it's called. I probably should have asked, but I haven't seen a name on any of the posts on Instagram, so I'm just going to call him Soldier. But of course, there are all links in the description to all the mocks you see in this episode, so just be sure to go check them out. You don't have to Google it. There are links there for you to take a closer look at some of the things I didn't include in the episode. So yeah, we spoke a bit about functionality. Now this mock does some really cool stuff. It uses a lot of the stud shooters, flick fire missiles, all sorts of stuff that you typically see in LEGO sets. And yeah, it does something really clever because he has these guns that, you know, actually fire, actually have ammo, and do, you know, what an actual gun does. So maybe you just want to go with aesthetics, like the last gun. It just looks cool, but it doesn't actually fire or do anything. Or you want to go for actual functionality. And, you know, LEGO has flick-fire missiles, stud launchers, all the different Bionicle weapons, like the Midak blasters, everything. So there's heaps of different options that you could choose from. Why not actually have your gun actually fire? Why not have a shoulder turret like War Machine that actually fires, you know, Zamispheres or something cool like that? Why not? There's heaps of possibilities, and I think this mock does a very, very nice job of showing that off. You know, he puts the ammo onto his belt and then can sort of switch it out and put it onto the gun and all sorts of stuff like that. So yeah, draw inspiration from real life. You know, what would an actual soldier or sci-fi war guy that you see from some TV show, what would they actually do? How do they use the props and weapons and things that they currently have? And then do that with your own mock. So thank you, Average Man. Let us move on to the next mock, which is by Mitch Henry and is a mock called Thera. So something that's really cool about this, all of these shots were done under studio lights, which is so cool because there's some really, really nice photos here. And I've said this before, a lot of these photos are really fun because they make this mock have so much personality, and it's fantastic. So definitely do that if you're a photography student, or you have access to a studio, or even if you're just doing something in school or college or your job. Maybe try and find some way to relate it to Lego. You know, working in a photography studio or something like that, you get to produce these amazing, amazing quality photos. Or maybe you have access to a 3D printer at your work or your school. Maybe you could 3D print some Bionicle parts and put them on a mock. Who knows? The possibilities are endless. So see what you can do and kind of think outside the box, because maybe you can do some really cool stuff that you never even thought about. Let us talk about the gun on this mock. What I love about it is it uses a Hero Factory as well as a Star Wars sort of gun blaster piece and actually makes a custom gun out of it, which is awesome because you could pick up any of the currently available in shops. And I mean, Toys R Us is sadly dying, so maybe you could head on down and get some really sweet discounts. Rest in peace, Toys R Us. I will miss you forever. You can get some of these parts very easily nowadays and then build a whole custom gun around that one part and get a really cool design, much like this one. And there's some cool stuff that Mr. Mitch Henry has done on this gun that I think are some good pointers. There's a lot of axle parts and various pins and things. Like the very tip of the gun there is, of course, an axle pin connector piece. And it looks very much like a typical gun, right? Fantastic. Hey, so yeah, grab some of those parts, which are going to be very common because you get them in almost every set. So yeah, grab some of your really common parts and just kind of play around and get the general shape of any gun. And grab one or two pieces and make that be sort of the center point of the gun and expand around from that. So yeah, I think that's really clever what Mitch has done. And overall, it's a great result and it really, really suits the mock as well. Something that I really like about the mock, because of course I want to talk a little bit about this cute little Matoran here. She uses a frame design by another AFOL mockist who used to be on mock pages, and I believe he's still on Flickr. His name is Chris Yee, and I believe, if I'm reading this correctly, he made this general frame, and Mitch has sort of expanded upon that and brought a character of his own design to life through that frame design. I imagine he's tweaked a few things and added stuff and changed things to suit his own needs, but I think that's really clever. You know, maybe a mockist that you follow or you idolize or you really like what they build has done something amazing. And you can pretty much see what they've done. Why not reverse engineer it, take some aspects from it, change it up slightly, change the color scheme, add a couple things, and then make your own character out of it as a result. For example, my friend ShadowGear6335 has a mock called Circuit, and I decided, hey, I really, really like this character. I'm just going to build my own version of the character. And I took a few concepts that I liked from the previous versions and newer versions and current version, but made it into my own. Mitch has, of course, done this with this mock, but also he stayed a little bit more true to the original frame. So maybe you could do that too. I mean, I'm sure they'd be humbled to see that. As long as you credit them, I'm sure they'd love it. You might learn a thing or two as well, so who knows. Anyway, that is it for that mock. Let's move on to another mock. Now, here's some of those realistic guns for all you guys who are asking for that. So this is a mock by Black Cat and is called Commando Drone. So he's got two guns here that look very, very realistic. Now, I'm no gun expert. I'm sure some of you are like, Ben, that's called the Flujamar. How do you not know this? You know, but I am no expert. I'm not going to pretend I am. I live in Australia. We don't have guns. So, yeah, I'm not going to be able to use any technical terms, so forgive me for that. I use what I know, and if I get it wrong, forgive me. The silver gun here. I don't know what it's based off. I don't know the name of the gun. I'm sure you experts, please tell me in the comments. Be happy to hear. But it has a very cool looking stock there using 1x2 system plates stacked essentially on top of each other, but they aren't quite pushed together. And that's a technique that's a little bit easier to do with system than it is with Bionicle, but who says you need to actually place a piece in the typical fashion? Some people do this with plates or tiles or whatever. They only just place it on one side, leaving the other side a little bit more ajar. And, you know, for example, you can do it on a wooden texture, so it kind of looks like sort of old, decaying wooden beams that are sort of not quite placed properly, and it can actually create a really awesome looking roof texture or wood on a dock or something like that. Or like this, you get a really cool curve through the brick. So why not do that? Creates a really nice looking stock, looks very realistic, and looks fantastic. Also cool to see on both guns a lot of the sort of axle connector joints, really creating a lot of the barrels and things like that. And man, it looks really cool. It looks very gun-like, looks fantastic. And again, like I said, you can use very simple axles and connector pins and, you know, all that sort of stuff that you have heaps of lying around in your collection and make some really cool, realistic looking guns. Also some really clever looking part usages that really look quite realistic and are sort of parts that, I don't know, I don't see too much in mocks. You know, we've got some of these hinge plates there towards the bottom of the silver gun, which really works quite nicely. And we've also got one of the old Toa Mata hand pieces there, sort of the back of the gun there, which is also really, really cool. So yeah, play around with some of those parts that you never ever use. Guns are really awesome in the sense that they all sort of are essentially the same thing. You know, some part needs to look like a trigger, some part you kind of hold up against your body, it needs some kind of barrel or a scope or whatever. You know, everything sort of has that sort of set standard to it, you know? So just kind of play around, you know, see what you can do. If you need some help, look at some reference images, base it off that, see what you can do. So yeah, some cool stuff going on with these guns that's very simple, but very, very effective and looks fantastic. Now let's talk a little bit about the Commando Drone. He's got a Clickets part as a heart light. Now, for those of you who may not know, Clickets was a theme that was a sort of similar to Friends and Elves and stuff, but it was more, here, buy these sets and build Lego jewelry, which is really, really cool, and I wish I bought some, because some of the parts are actually really awesome. But apparently they're very expensive on Bricklink, so if you can find some for cheap, definitely pick them up. But yeah, he's used that as a sort of heart light, which looks fantastic, looks very robotic and very sort of futuristic, which this mock sort of has a bit of that kind of vibe going on, in my opinion. So that's an awesome, awesome part use. And speaking of awesome part usages, he has used silver Toa Nuva leg and arm parts for the lower leg of this mock. In my opinion, those parts are very difficult to use because, I don't know, there's no sort of posability in them. You know, they're too short to really make up the typical length of a typical Bionicle for any limb. I don't know, they're just kind of cumbersome and hard to use, and I don't see too many people using them. But here, he's blended them so nicely with other greebles and things like that. And it looks fantastic, doesn't it? It looks brilliant. It's so nicely... It flows so nicely with everything else in the mock, and just, yeah, it looks great. So why not do that? Maybe there's a few parts you have sitting around you never use, or you think, man, I wish I could use this. You know, maybe you don't need to use it as its specific purpose. Maybe you can add stuff, put stuff behind it, put a couple pieces on top, all that sort of stuff, and then kind of buff it out and round it off in a new and interesting way that does something fantastic like this. I said before Greebles, and people have asked for a Greebles episode, which it's going to come. I'm sure I'll do one. But I was listening to a Star Wars panel, and obviously the term Greebles is essentially a Star Wars thing to some degree. It's more just a loose space term. But, you know, for those of you who don't know, Greebles are the small little details, like you see them on the side of the Death Star, all that sort of robotic-y, sci-fi space junk all along the trench in like Star Wars and the Trench Run and all that sort of stuff. Those are Greebles. I was listening to a Star Wars panel, and Pablo, what's-his-face, who makes Rebels and the Clone Wars, he does a lot of the art stuff with Dave Filoni, he called them Greeblies in a panel, and I was like, have I been saying it wrong for like 10 years? Are they called Greeblies? I was like, oh my goodness. And I swear everyone I've spoken to says Greebles. So sound off in the comments. How do you pronounce Greebles? Because I feel like I've been pronouncing it wrong. If a guy from Star Wars who does a lot of the art stuff is calling them Greeblies, I'm like, oh, okay. So maybe he just got it wrong. Maybe he likes to call them that. I don't know. But that blew my mind. Speaking of, I have no transition for that. Let's move on to the next mock, which I think is a bonus mock. I've lost track. I've done like 4 mocks already. 3 mocks. See, I've lost count. I don't know. Anyway, this is another mock by Da Black Cat, and I'll go over this a bit quickly because obviously I'm doing 2 mocks by him. How dare I? Blah, blah, blah. This is really cool because, again, really cool part usages. It uses some treads and wheel pieces and crazy cool things to get like an ammo stock, like on a chain gun. And by the way, who doesn't love chain guns and Gatling guns and things? They're the coolest guns. They're the coolest. So yeah, build a Bionicle Gatling gun. Why not? And it also uses a mask as a sort of kind of scope heads-up display, I guess. That's sort of what I see it as. I think it's a really nice, clever addition there. So yeah, maybe you can even put some masks on your guns. You know, and some masks, much like this one, have really cool textures on them. Different colors in the one part, so maybe you get to play around with that a little bit. And that's pretty fun and pretty awesome. Now, the reason I included this is because it actually has instructions and a little bit of a breakdown of how it was made. So definitely check that out. I'm barely going to show you how it's done, because I'm going to make you look at his stuff. But yeah, give it a look. Have a little look-see, make the gun for yourself, see what you learn, and put it on one of your own mocks. Okay, maybe this is the bonus mock. Should have read my notes. Anyway, this is pretty much the bonus mock, because this probably won't be in the thumbnail. I don't know, I haven't made it yet. I'm going to show you, I did something similar to this in the last Guns episode, but I'm going to do it again, because you need to look at it. Here's a guy who I've actually met in person. He's a fantastic guy. His name is Nick Brick. Now, I'm not actually covering any one mock from Nick Brick, because he builds insane stuff. He builds life-size replicas of video game guns, swords, grenades, lightsabers, whatever. You name it, he's probably built it. So he kind of specializes in cosplay and props and stuff. It's awesome. And he does some insane things. And so that's another way to look at it. Do you want to build a gun for your mock or for yourself? Why not use your Bionicle parts or even your system parts if you have them lying around and build a life-size gun? You don't have to build a huge rifle if you don't have the parts. Maybe just build, a small little pistol or something. Or just a grenade using, I don't know, 10 pieces. I don't know. He's done some where he's just used planet sets and added a few other pieces on it and it looks like a grenade. It's amazing. So, why not do something like that? It's a great idea. And it'd be fun because you actually get to play with it. And that's pretty cool too. So yeah, that's about it for this slightly longer episode, maybe. I'll probably cut a lot of this down in post. But hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you learned a thing or two. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any future theme suggestions that you'd like to see on the show, be sure to let me know. Or if you have any mocks that you have built or your friends have built that you would like to see on the show, send me a message, let me know. There'll be links in the description for places in which you can do that. I'd love to hear them. Also be sure to check the links in the description for the mocks that you saw in today's episode, because like I said before, there'll be some cool how-to things, and check out these guys, because they build cool stuff. Anyway, that's about it. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next episode, guys. Have a good day.